of front-end processes and back-end processes, because once you start looking at contracts, of course, you're discovering step by step how many necessary operational steps are there. And are you advising your clients? What's your kind of whole approach there on automation? Because I know you are about contracts, but there got to be something more you can do for your clients. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so contract management is really interesting. You know, you and I both know business process automation very, very well, and that's sort of the domain of the back office by and large. Whereas contract lifecycle management is a kind of a well-defined category, but traditionally it really it starts with perhaps drafting the contract, then you go through negotiating the contract, redlining. There's a lot of document workflow. You know, maybe before I can send out a contract, it has to be approved by you, you know, because you're my manager, or I'm using a specific type of clause in my contract, and you're in the legal department, you have to approve the use of that clause. But traditionally, it almost ends at signature. It's like, oh yes, we signed the contract, we're done. And then what happens is the contract gets thrown over the wall to IT or the operations team, who then have to swivel chair and kind of, oh no, now we need to parameterize SAP because this was an enterprise license agreement, and we now need to set up, you know, all the rate tables in SAP or whatever it is. So what we allow you to do is to grab that data digitally that you've signed and move it automatically into the back office. And you can either do that through parameterization, you know, so you might have an existing pricing engine that you just need to configure based on values in the contract, or you can actually write logic itself that's sort of attached to the contract and runs when the contract is signed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you are automating, right, while you're sort of preparing your contract, right, for digital world. You're sort of, right, already helping to clean up some of the dark corners of that process, right?
Yeah, so, you know, in my first sort of supply chain example where, you know, you're buying some goods from me and I have to ship them to you by a certain date, and if they're late, there's a penalty. That's an acceptance of delivery clause in most supply chain contracts. And we actually have some logic that sits behind that clause that will be monitoring when the goods arrived. And then you can work with your IT team to connect that clause to your IoT platform or your warehouse system, so that whenever the goods arrive, you know, they're maybe scanned with a barcode or RFID, that electronic message will be sent to the contract. And it's the contract itself then that will know, okay, on this date, the goods arrived, therefore I can release payment to Irene. Which is quite a different way of thinking of process automation. It's like everything is driven by the logic of the contract, because fundamentally those are your obligations, right? It's the tip of the